Hello, welcome back to the Crux of It. Today I have with me Louise. Louise and I have known each other for a great number of years now, and I am going to let her introduce herself, but I'll just give a quick intro to me. So I am Heather, and I am founder of Crux Design Studio, and this podcast is set up to really explore the intersection of design and business and leadership and sharing insights about real experiences and just create the conversations that are shaping the future of how we work and how we create. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Louise for her to do an introduction, tell us a little bit more about who she is and what she does.
Lovely. Hi, Heather. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see
I'm Louise Penistone. As Heather said, I think we've known each other for probably 6 or 7 years, but mostly not in the work environment. So I think but I know we both come at our work and the pathways that we've chosen in very, very similar ways. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of this podcast with you. It means a lot to me because I've spent many years. I trained as an accountant, but I also spent many years almost diversifying every role I jumped into and becoming a different version of myself every time. And each of those roles I've really learned a lot about myself in terms of who I want to be and what I want to be. And I've learned that I want to be, a leader. I love leadership. I can see the value of good, strong leadership. So that's important to me. And it's important to do things like this, where you really analyze and discuss those qualities of leadership. And I also like working in environments where leadership is really needed. It's something that is the most vital commodity that's needed to take transform a business or take an opportunity to another level. That's something that really intrigues me as well. So as a business leader, I think I started off as an accountant, but I've evolved into this beast that is all about transformation and change, and using my strengths and the strengths of others to impact and make that change, a reality. So a long intro. I hope that was.
No, I mean, interesting as always. As always, I'm always fascinated by everything that you have to say. And I'm so glad that you're here as well. So thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
joining. Um, and I was just reminded by something that I learned in business school. We had a speaker come in and he was a CEO. And it's kind of an old school way of thinking, but they were saying at the time, you can't become a CEO without coming through accountancy. Because if you don't have a strong
Yeah,
idea of numbers, you can't lead a company. And
yeah,
so actually your rise makes complete sense to me because you have this natural ability at leadership. We were just talking before the show started and we'll no doubt get into it. So we won't give it
yeah,
any spoilers,
yeah,
but how your mind thinks in this kind of solutions, problem identification solutions with no fear, kind of in partnership with your great understanding with numbers is
yeah,
why you are in the leadership position that you are. I have
yeah.
no doubt.
And it wasn't
Yeah.
planned at all.
So,
I think it was yeah. I think that's something about the journey you start on is not necessarily, where you've been is not necessarily where you're going. So it's a really good phrase. But um, yeah,
and that's
I
probably
don't think
still
there's
the
anything
case.
you.
You're still probably on that
Yeah,
journey. We're going to
yeah.
talk in 5 more years and you're going to be another
So yeah, where we're
evolution.
going now? Yeah,
Yes. Okay, so um, let's get into it. I think what I'm interested, well, will you just kind of give a little precursor of what you're doing now, what your position is, and what your kind of role is at the
yeah.
moment? Because I think that's going to be helpful to kind of link it back to how you make decisions and how you kind of lead your teams and your
Sure.
industry.
So I'm managing director for a professional services firm. My business is probably about 60 people in a firm of just under 500. With the firm is 30 years in existence, but the professional services part of the business is in its fourth year. So It's still very emergent, still maturing as a business. And my role fundamentally is to, you know, embed a new growth business in a canvas and a culture that's been established for 30 years in the world of PFI. And we PFI social infrastructure, so it's a very complex environment. But so I'm here to reset culture, to reset a new vision, to grow a business out of the seeds and the oak trees of what this mature business has been for many, many years. So it's, as you say, it's bringing, my business knowledge is very strong. I've got strong financial acumen, so it's bringing change, but weighted back in financial and operational commercial robustness as well. So my role is multifaceted, but it's ultimately it's a creative role. It's a role about growth, creating opportunity, but basing that on the reality of core core data, strong financial numbers. It's all about performance and growth at the end of the day, isn't it? To keep the
Yeah.
business afloat. So yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like I'm the luckiest person in the world. I have a job that allows me to dip into all of these different buckets at any point in any day and draw out what I've learned over the years, the experiences that I've had, and bring it into this role, which is, this business is growing very quickly. So it's a fantastic canvas for me to work with. So that's where
It
I'm.
sounds like a bit of a startup inside, as you said, a 4-decade
Yeah.
company.
I mean, that's actually what
Um,
we call
Pretty
it. A 30-year-old startup actually is a phrase that's
amazing.
often used. And there are challenges with that because, there's almost a kind of, you should know who you are as a business after 30 years. And we really do. Because when you're trying to grow something, as a bubble on the side, you've got to maintain this strong brand and reputation because we do know who we are after 30 years, but show how
Mm,
we're building on that to bring more value to existing clients and new clients based on 30 years of heritage, but
mm.
innovation and change and new, just yeah, and new thinking that needs to be
Yeah, breathe new life
breathe
into,
new. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
This role
Which,
was almost, I don't know, written for me, really.
yeah, that's
It's
amazing.
great. Yeah,
Who doesn't want that?
I know. I know. In fact, I'll be honest with you. I actually was interviewed for a different role within the same organisation, and I wasn't even interviewed. I just had a chat with the CEO, and and he just, after talking to me, he said, This is not your role." And I know that's not my role, but I'm really interested in what you're doing. And when, yeah, I'm really interested in what you can do, and then the rest is history. I've ended up in this.
Did they create a role for you?
That No, they were making some changes, so there were growth in other parts of the business, and they needed someone to step into those shoes. So they
Yeah.
knew this was coming, um, but it was just when they met me, it was actually, let's do this now rather than later, because
Yeah, serendipity. We
you
have the right
know
person in front of us.
yeah,
Let's not
yeah,
let her
and
go.
that was interesting because that's actually was the something that attracted me to say yes, because here was an organisation that they knew where they were going, they knew what they needed to do, they didn't know how to do it, but they knew that, they had a vision, they had a plan. And to kind of step up and say, actually, do you know what, we're going to accelerate that and we're going to do this because we've met you, two worlds have collided, let's make this happen. Said
Mm.
a lot about the organisation. I thought that's an organisation I would like to be part of. To be an MD in that organisation meant that I needed to I knew that they needed a mindset that would continue that agility and that
Dynamic behavior.
dynamic turn on a
Yeah.
sixpence, take action. So I thought this is really going to suit me and how I like to work. So it was a big tick for the jump that
Yeah.
I made from a really safe role in a
Yeah.
huge organization. It was a big leap, but I'm so pleased I took it.
It sounds like to me, there's quite often where people can sell you on a role when you're in the room and you sign on the dotted line and then you show up and they're completely different
Yeah,
than how they sold themselves and how they sold the role. But it sounds like actually, even though they were 30 plus years in establishment, that they were really committed to this
Yeah,
entrepreneurial, you know, dynamic environment that you'll lead, and
yeah,
that they'll take the best integrated into the old system, and you'll take the best of the established system into. So there's kind of a marriage or
uh,
blending of
yeah. And I think
two.
that's really important. And I think that's really important as a leader as well, that you've got to recognise you're being brought in. I was being brought in to bring, bring change, bring that fresh thinking, but also to be respectful of this environment, this physical and cultural environment that existed. And it was bring that change. It's the phrase between acculturation versus assimilation, and it's don't become
Mm.
part of the establishment has been doing things this way for a long time, and it's been pretty successful. But if we want to be over there, if we want to be moving, from this path and to broadening the paths and walking along across more paths, they didn't want to bring someone in that was just going to assimilate into the existing culture. It had to be, bring a piece of both. I really valued that. I really valued the fact that that's what they were looking for, and that was the brochure. My experience in the last year has definitely met the brochure.
Lived
That's
up to
exactly
it. Sure.
what they need. So it is really cool that when you've been hired to do something, and it's really cool that you actually get to do it.
Actually get to do it.
So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
which I
which is
think,
where,
yeah,
and
huge
then I'm
frustration.
thinking, as you know, my mind is going like, oh, physical environment. How do we blend the two? How
Yeah,
do we get the new culture with the old culture, and kind of blend but respect this new breath of life that's coming in, and let that bleed into the other space? And what does that look like in
yeah,
the way of the physical setting? I hope that you aren't just showing up to the office where it is under that kind of maybe previously established culture. I hope that you've been able to bring in a bit of
yeah.
new life into your team, because your team's quite large as well. So I hope I'm almost seeing it as like a bubble attached
You're
to
trying to
a rec,
punch our way in
a
into
very
the,
rectilinear
yeah,
building, and that we've got this like bulging bubble that's kind of just just kind of like sitting on the side, but kind of infiltrating a little bit, you
yeah.
know?
And it has, very easy to walk through the front door and think, oh, I've got to tread really carefully here. The best advice I ever had from previous bosses that I've hugely respected is, when you step into a new role, come straight out the gate with your values and your principles and what you want to be known for. And because if you don't do that at the outset, it's very hard to start to embed that as time goes on. So it was a balance of walking through the front door and taking everything as it was, physically as well as environmentally, culturally, but also coming in with, okay, so this is
Yeah.
me, this is what I'm about, and this is how I like to do things, and this is where I've seen just selling that piece at the front end. And what I found was that this there was a huge amount of change that was needed at the outset, and I thought, oh, I'm going to have to go in quite heavy handed in the first 90 days, right, when you're getting to know people and listening more than speaking. And it wasn't like that at all. The reality was very, very different. So if I'm going to spend 90 days listening, I'm going to be part of the problem in 90 days time. I'm not going to be part of the solution. So I had to really get involved and make some quite strategic changes. And you know what? I did the first one that had to be dealt with within a couple of weeks of me joining. Um, it was less about the actual issue itself. I could really see the impact of strong, decisive, at pace, highly principled leadership. I could
Mm.
see that had such a positive impact on the rest of the business. that all
Mm.
the others that were watching this happen and had been watching bad behaviours, bad performance for some time, to suddenly see, hang on, you've come in, you've said this, you've heard us, and you've dealt with it. And there was a shift.
A level of respect
Yeah,
would have
but I
been,
mean, I think a level of respect, maybe, but I think it was more about a level of, wow, you know what? We're finally being listened to, and we're working so hard, and X, Y, Z, this is happening over there. And it's what's the point? They were starting to disengage. You could
yeah.
see that, and I think that was something very, very early on that I saw. That you can read all the books, you can do all your 90-day preparation, you can have all the training in the world, but when you walk in the front door, and you do have to walk in the front door, you can't do it from a remote office and
Yeah.
pontificate from
Online now,
high.
Teams.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, you've got to get, you know, eye to eye, the whites of the eyes piece. You know,
Mhm.
you've just got to be ready for the fact that when you walk in the front door, you've it's what do you see, what are you hearing, what have you know, deal with it in the moment. And I think that suits me, because I like that agility. I like being, we talked earlier about catching bullets, didn't we? And, you know, when things
Yeah.
get fired out quickly, what do you know, how do you respond to that? I
Mm.
think those are great strengths that as a business leader, you absolutely need to have. And if you don't have it, you need to make sure you've got people very close to you that do,
Mm.
because people want to feel safe and secure in their careers, in their roles. There's huge dependency, isn't there? We all work for one or two reasons, and most of that is putting food on the table and water and you know, the comforts that these aren't comfort, these are necessities that we have to have as human beings. So people don't necessarily turn
Mm.
up for work just because just for the hell of it. They're there for a purpose, and they want that security. And a key part of my role in this organisation, where we were trying to do something different. And if you know about the PF, sorry, I'm jumping around, but the PFI, the PFI space in
Yeah.
the UK, in the next
And tell us what PFI means for those.
it's privately financed initiative. So it's basically funding organisations have invested to build hospitals and schools, and so
Infrastructure.
social infrastructure that you know, councils, authorities don't have the funding to build themselves. So it gets built through a PFI, usually lasts 25, 30, 35 years. And the company I work for manage those PFIs. But the whole
Mm.
PFI landscape, they're coming to the end of those 20, 25, 30 years in the next 5 to 10 years. So that whole revenue stream is about to fall off a cliff. So, you know,
And
these
does that mean,
assets.
so they're coming to the end of their contract? Is that what that
Um,
means? Or
it means that they've come to, you know, the banks, the lenders that have invested to build these assets, you know, they've built it, they've delivered it, so they're taking the money out, they're on to the next project. So those assets, the score just doesn't get swallowed up and, you know, disappears. It then gets handed back to the public authority, to you know, or the trust or the academy, and it has to continue to run. So, you know, so we wanted to be a business that was, you know, looking ahead, seeing where the market is changing. This cliff edge that was, we've got 60 or 70 PFIs that we manage. It's a huge portfolio, but it's a portfolio that, in, you know, it's just going to decrease and decrease and decrease. By 2048, there'll be none left. It's a long time away, but you
but
know,
not that long,
but not,
actually.
yeah, you
Yeah.
know, God, I remember the year 2000 thinking, how old will I be in 2026? And here I am, that old in 2026. So, so it's quite scary. But
That work.
so everybody in the business knew we're not, we're probably in a safe place for the next 4 or 5 years, maybe 10 years, depending on what projects that you're allocated to.
Mm.
So what the vision for the company was, no, we're here for the long term. We're here beyond 2048. We're a growing business. We're a growing concern. So what do we need to do that's going to, you know, we can take an offer out to the market building on this 30 year of heritage. So it's such a brilliant strategy, a brilliant, you know, future ahead of us. But it needed people to come in that were going to help shift that dial. And I
Mm.
needed to, I'd never worked in PFI. So who am I to walk in through the front door as the MD and say, well, here's how we're going to do things differently? And so I needed to earn that trust and that credibility. And I found the first way to do it was through taking action and decisive action, but with integrity and with principles. Um, and I hold those very dear to myself. And I think if you ask anybody that worked in my team, what are they could tell you. They would say, they they say to, I spoke to someone yesterday, she said, I know exactly what you're about. I know what you need. I know what you like. I know what you don't like. And I even know when you're not happy with the situation. And I said, how do you know? And she said, you just use different words. It's a different narrative, but it's the same tone. It's the same. And I thought, wow, I'm so pleased to have that
That
impact.
feedback
That's
and that,
yeah.
yeah, and that positive feedback of
And
that's
and
how I want to represent.
so the hard stuff, the hard discussions they're welcomed because they're understood, and they're understood that you're raising this because this is important. This is a problem. This is not you coming in and barking and being a leader that sits at the top and tells everyone what to do. You're coming in and you're owning and understanding who we are as a business and how we need to get to where we've got to get to, and working with us on that. So I'm, you know, I I don't know. I feel like I can be so creative with this role on the core of a foundation that is so well established with people. The people in this business have that they have all the knowledge, have all the domain knowledge, the relationships. It's like being given the keys to an amazing car or an amazing house and walking in and saying, "Oh, well,
It all works perfectly.
where should I put the
And all you need
furniture?"
to do
You know,
is manage it.
yeah, just have to live in it. Just have to live in it and
What are
move a
your
few things
principles?
around. And
The
yeah,
principles
so
of Louise that you were saying you have strong principles when of how you are a leader and that they can that your team of 60 can recognize this in you. I'm kind of curious to know what those principles are. And I'm
okay,
also
yeah,
curious to know how you deal with conflict resolution. We've heard different
yeah,
words are used, but the same tone. And I certainly know you as a very respectful and kindness first, I will say.
yeah.
So I can hear that, but I'm kind of curious to know those two elements. What are your principles of leadership, and how do you deal with conflict resolution?
Yeah. So I think the first one is you've got to be consistent. So so I have a saying where I say just don't walk by. If there's something that I can see, if some I've seen or something that has been explained to me, I always say I can't not know this. This is information that you've given to me, and I want to take action with it. And that's a key message that I consistently have that approach. So it could be something personal, it could be something about the business, whatever it is, it does not matter. The severity does not matter. For me, it's all about once I know I have a responsibility to well let's resolve, let's fix, let's undo, let's whatever it is. But my second layer to that is all about there is a what were the intentions behind. I will seek to understand better the intentions behind why the problem, the challenge has evolved, and then I very quickly, I say to people, trust me with everything. Tell me everything. If you trust me to deal with this, I need to trust you to have given me everything that you know, and we'll deal with it. And that says a lot about whether your intentions were good or negative, or because if people don't want to tell you, you can pretty much assume they're trying to hide something, aren't they? They're trying to.
Yeah,
So
they're
so this
they're constructing a different narrative
they
than.
yeah, and they're not consistently doing that, so they're making it up. But the third thing is action. So I'm just known for someone that I will not let things rest. I will always, and to whatever degree it might be needed, it could be a light touch, it could be a conversation, it could be something much more significant. It could even be about bringing in business change, and actually huge with my financial background. I can see a lot of poor behaviors were happening unintentionally, and they were unintentionally because they didn't have the right access to indicators, to data that would enable them to do things differently. I can see right through that because I know how, accounting works. So I was able to kind of, okay, I get this. Let's do this, this, and this. Let's bring this differently. Let's have access to that system. Why don't we do it
Mm,
this way? Why didn't let's start with this point over here, then we'll end up at this point over here. And everyone was like, oh yeah, that will, so action. So for me, it's always be consistent. I think always, if you're always responding the same way to everything that's put against you, people will not challenge you for bias or favoritism or any of
mm,
those things that come into play, which I think tend to stop people taking action because they don't want to be
mm,
accused of that. So
mm,
you mentioned conflicts, conflict resolution, conflict management. I
mm,
think if you've started the process off in that open way, when it comes to having those difficult conflict conversations, you've got all the facts, you're dealing with the facts, you're not dealing with emotions, you're dealing with reality, you're not dealing with hearsay. Um, and that's where I've just carved out my path, being that person that says facts, action, consistency, and with integrity. And
mm,
that's forever, right? Yeah,
mm,
nothing needs to change on that. But the more you do it, in a way, the less you have to say you do it, because people
mm,
just know. I know that everybody knows with me, if they put something on my radar, they'll know it'll be dealt with. And I'm certainly not one of those people that you've probably seen this a lot as well. It's very difficult for people less senior in an organization to raise issues. Truth to
mm.
power, it's very difficult, isn't it, to really speak up about that. And I've often heard this
Give
played
them
back that,
access to the leadership team so that these things can be voiced because there's a lot of people above them that if they
yeah,
follow the chain, then their message is so diluted when it
it's
gets to the
it's
top.
it's definitely diluted, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it's usually about the person in the chain, right? So does it even get to the place it needs to get to? I've often heard it played back, well, unless they're going to raise a grievance, or unless they want to formally raise this, what do they want us to do about it? And I'm like,
Mm,
no, 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 no. That
mm,
is you absolving yourself of taking any responsibility about something is not right. So there's this often been the case where, well, unless they're prepared to, to put their hand up and speak to this, we can't action it. And I'm not that person. I am that person that I have heard and I have seen, and I want to have a conversation. And I've found going straight to, giving everybody in that mix the opportunity to have a voice, to say what's on their mind, to talk about their intentions, to are they recognizing the impact of what they're doing.
mm.
90% of the time people don't. And
Yeah.
you can just, these things can be resolved and can move forward. So I'm very much in that, if the elephant's in the room, welcome the elephant, make them sit down, and let's, smother them in butter, whatever you want to do, and then have a
Mm,
conversation with them. And the elephant might not disappear out the room, but we all know the elephant's there, and we know why
mm.
the elephant's there, and we can work together to,
We can manage that elephant
yeah,
now. And
yeah,
yeah,
or keep the
yeah,
elephant. I don't know. It might be we need the
yeah,
elephant.
might
Who
be
knows?
beneficial.
Yeah, I don't know why we're talking about elephants, but it seems to be it resonates.
Yes, it makes sense. I'm just curious how, because you have a very large team. So I can imagine that there's a lot of dynamics at play. And I'm kind of curious how much of your day is spent with this? Because you obviously have a job to do as well. And of course, part of your job is to create
Yeah,
the best working dynamic as possible, but it's also driving growth and driving new opportunity. And what I also want to get into is managing all of these teams that are basically subcontractors outside of the house. And I know you're doing that as well. So there's a lot of facets to your
yeah,
role. How are
yeah.
you inviting these conversations into the room? And I can imagine it's not in a kind of open forum where you're almost in a town hall saying, okay, you're next, and people are putting up their hands. How is this dealt with, this kind of series, and how much information do you need before you start actioning?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's. I mean, I don't. For me, it's quite a small team because I've run teams of 1,000 before. So
Wow.
and that's you know, there are a lot of layers when you've got a huge business of 1,000 people, and I think it doesn't matter whether it's 60 or 1,000. It's your organisational structure is really important, and
Mm.
even I think with a small team, you should have a structure that is ready for growth. It's ready for more. So and I've got to have trusted people in that structure as well. So, because I can't see everything and you can't be there for everybody all of the time. You spend every day, all day, just talking to people because
Yeah,
everybody would like a bit of you. So,
yeah.
um, I've got very strong business leaders that work closely with me, and I trust they have strong empathy as well as great skills in their technical areas, and that is
Mm.
important to me to have people that are I suppose driving the trucks behind me have got those other skills as well, and I look for that in my organizational design. I look for that in leaders because I need them to be the eyes and ears and bringing that up to me. That's one thing, and I think that takes away. You know, I, I'm almost the escalation of if that layer hasn't resolved, I'm the escalation above. But what I really strive to do is to not be back to the physical barriers as well. So even we've got an open plan office in London. Um, I don't go to the open plan office and go and sit up. We've got a lovely coffee shop on the top floor. It's amazing
Mm.
coffee. It'd be so easy to just go and sit up there, the lovely view of London, drinking
I love
beautiful
good coffee.
coffee. You know, I mean, what's not to like? So easy to do that, but I don't want to
Yeah.
be that person that turns up and goes and sits in a booth and goes and sits somewhere else. I want
Isolate
to be
yourself. Yeah.
in the environment. And I noticed this actually when I first started to do that. I thought people were really quiet, and I thought, oh, I feel like I want to say boo and just wake the office up. And so I sat there. I said, and one day I said, it's very quiet in here. It's very quiet, and I feel like I'm making too much noise. And people looked at me as if like, oh my god, well, she's the
It's
MD, and she spoke. She spoke, and so
don't look, don't look direct.
yeah, don't eye contact. She's going to ask us a difficult question, and I thought, do you know, I'm just gonna be me. I want to be me. I don't want to be a title and a role and a figment of a in a structure. I want to be me. I'm here because I'm me, and I will make a difference if I can bring me into this workplace, and if I can see
Yeah.
everybody else doing the same thing. And so I thought,
Mm.
again, straight out the bat, I'm just going to have conversations in this office that is very silent. Nobody wants to talk. And strangely enough, this is a solution for you, a problem for you, maybe with a solution about to happen, but it's a very small office. We're quite tightly packed in, and I think the layout is not conducive to conversation. Right?
Mhm.
It's because we've tried to pack in desks to maximize the
Maximize.
footprint, and
Yeah.
but it tends to drive if people start to chat. They say, "Oh, let's go outside." We get up and walk outside, and then that
Mm.
immediately takes the atmosphere somewhere else. So I
Well, and
can,
it's we call it spontaneous opportunities for collaboration, which is where the real kind of gems of making an impact on the business happen. And
yeah,
so those are the jewels to the space that shouldn't be removed because then someone can't overhear and join in and actually
and
would be the
can't
right
add
person
value
to
and
do.
can't,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's something. So I said, why don't we just take all this away and have one big round desk in the middle, like Knights
Yeah.
of the Round Table. We've only got 16 desks, and I said this would be great because you can kind of
See everyone.
you can see everyone.
Yeah.
There's at the moment there's backs to backs and there's barriers, um,
Yeah.
and it doesn't. So what was your question? It was I've forgotten your question. I think it was
Well, I think we've gone um Oh, what was my question? You walked in to the office, and I think we were talking about how you influenced the first day. I don't actually remember exactly what my
No,
question was, but what I was
because
interested
this is what I'm
in.
like though, Heather. We start talking and we
Yeah.
just to see, or that's something else that I want to, is something I'd like to change or improve, and I end up
Yeah.
going in all these different
I
places.
remember what it was. I remember what it was actually. We were talking about conflict resolution. I was
Yeah.
saying, how do you make time for everyone? Does
Yes.
everyone,
Yeah.
and you were saying, I make myself available. I don't hide myself away. And then that's transitioned into, furniture and the removal of other conversations and gone into a round table solution,
Yeah.
which really interested me because I wrote um, a piece for LinkedIn about roundtables
Yeah.
for, yeah, just a month ago, but it happened at Christmas time where my mother-in-law is hearing impaired. N-
Oh, yeah.
not
Yeah.
not that it would affect Mary. She's such like a life of the party, and I didn't realize how much Christmas was impacting her with a rectilinear table, just a
Yeah.
long, rectangle, kind of a formal setting. And I don't know why, but I got rid of it this year and I rented a huge 14-person round
Yeah.
table. And at the end of it, she was quite emotional and said, I heard every conversation. I
Wow.
followed
Yeah.
I tracked every conversation. When I couldn't hear, I could see faces, I read lips.
Yeah.
I felt like I was present for the
Included.
entire
Yeah.
holiday. And I thought that impacts business because
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
people are coming to the office and they can't hear. And that might be neurodiversity where they're taking too much in. And that might be also a structural in their ear where they're losing their hearing. Sight is another big thing. I think sight's more recognized because we know a stripy pattern is going to
Yeah.
influence others. We never do a dark transition carpet or flooring to the
Yeah.
next.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm getting into my world.
Yeah.
But I thought furniture does have an impact on
Yeah.
discussion, on the way it works. And then I'll link it further to the discussion I had on my last podcast with Catherine Dean. She has decided to get, because you were talking about organizational charts, and I want to hear more about that from your perspective. But she's decided she has an international team. She doesn't think the hierarchy is working, and she's
Yeah.
gotten rid of, and she's trying a round table solution. And I walked away from it and had, discussion with my own team. And one of the women on the team was like, "Well, surely it has to be her in the middle, and then there's going to be rings moving out." So it's like translating the hierarchical into a new hierarchical, but it's smaller
Yeah.
rings and it's concentric instead
Yeah.
of a linear. And I said, "No, she is in fact one of the people at the table, and
Yeah.
everyone has an
Everyone's at
equal
the table.
voice."
Yeah.
But I don't know if it'll work. She doesn't know if it's gonna work. This is just her
Yeah.
new leadership that she's moving forward. So I'm curious to hear more about the roundtable, the integration of that collaboration, those spontaneous moments, and then also your organizational structure. I'd be curious to
Yeah.
know how
So
you're defining that.
yeah. So and back to making myself available. I think it's it's create a pull rather than So my goal was to create this persona around me where it didn't matter that we sat how we sat in the office or where we were, that actually people could see the approachable me, the human me, not you know the MD when the MD is needed to take action and to be an MD, but
Yeah.
still the person, the human behind that. I think that's how leadership has modernized
Mm,
significantly over the years, isn't it? That it's less hierarchical, so it doesn't matter whether it's circles or concentric circles or
mm,
matrix or whatever type of organization. It is
mm,
entirely about behaviors, how you behave as a leader. And I think just recognizing, you know, and we said earlier, where you are is not necessarily how you got to where you are, is not necessarily how you'll get to where you're going, but recognizing how you got to where you are, you're going to meet those same, people who have got to where they have got to up here on the next path up. So always showing that
mm.
respectful, appreciation of the barriers people have to go through to get to the next level. And I think if you forget how to listen and how to understand and how to learn from the people that you've navigated through, how will you improve and learn to get through the next layer and the next layer? So you're always learning as a leader, aren't you? You're always becoming something different. And I'm to be relevant as a leader as well, and especially as I'm quite old, and at this point say you don't look it, but it's fine. I just assumed you said
You
that.
don't look at.
Thank you.
No, you're
Um,
stunning.
but I think I do see that as I I have strong ideas, but my ideas based on my experience and where I've come from, and the world is really different post COVID. The world is very
Mm.
different. The behaviours of what people want out of the workplace is very different. Graduates coming out of university, some graduates didn't actually spend any time at university, and they're
Mm.
coming into the workplace with a very different confidence level, or an understanding of communication skills. Everything is so vastly different, and I've not been through that journey, so it's really important for me to have that openness with the people around me, that they can share with me on their terms, what the business feels like, what the culture feels like, how difficult it is for them to do their jobs, right? And me to listen to that and do something with it. And that, I think, it's not about finding time for that. It's just creating the space where when people have something to say, they feel comfortable coming to share that with me, or sharing it with my business leaders who will share it with me. So it's not about time anymore. It's about environment and culture. And
Mm.
again, that's modern leadership. Again, that's how things have really, really changed. So, um, you know, less about presenteeism and more about outputs. And I drive that as well with my team. I found, and I did this as well, actually. My first job as a consultant, I remember saying every day saying to my boss, right, I'm not going to be in today. I'm going to be doing this. And he said, Louise, why are you giving me a rundown of your diary? And I said, I don't know. I feel like I've come from an operational role, and I feel like I should be in the office every day. And he said,
Accounting, being
yeah,
accountable,
yeah,
or
yeah. And he said, if you're in the office
I
every
almost
day,
need permission in a way.
you need, I was kind of seeking that,
Yeah.
yeah, I was seeking that permission or approval of,
Or
here's my,
validation. I'm really busy.
yeah,
I'm doing things.
yeah.
And
And he
yeah.
was like, I didn't care.
Yeah.
First of all, if you're in the office every day, you're not doing what you should be doing because you need to be out there. But I just want results. I just want to
Mhm.
see outcomes and results. And I thought, learning point for me, this was, remember that. Remember, that's really important, to make people feel comfortable making their decisions and owning their decisions and the outcomes of those decisions. And so back to the conflict piece, when that goes wrong, you were empowered. That was your decision to do it that way. What would you do differently? How has that impacted on what's gone wrong, or how could you have avoided the situation becoming a conflict in the first place? What could you have done differently? And I think people own that more when they know they've made that decision themselves. It's not you as if you're a hierarchical leader that has rules and policies and lacing, and it's very black and white about, I want you in this office on Mondays and Fridays. I want this, I want this, I want this. When stuff goes wrong, it's very, very challenging to go back to those individuals and say, well, what could you have done differently about this?
Yeah.
Because they'll
Yeah.
say, well, I just followed the rules. I just
You
did what
did,
you
David.
ordered me to
I
do.
did what you, yeah, exactly.
So that's, for me, that doesn't work. It's like unstructured leadership,
Mm,
unstructured hierarchy, but also
mm,
my day is unstructured. I
mm,
can't
mm,
set Mondays are for one-to-ones and Tuesdays are for finance meetings and Wednesdays. It just doesn't happen that way with 60 people with diverse needs, diverse roles, living in different parts of the country. It just doesn't work. And I think I learned very quickly that actually it's, years ago, I would set agendas, calendar items, making sure I've got one-to-ones at least every 2 weeks with all these people. I've got town
mm,
halls, I've got forums, I'll do a newsletter, I could spend all week just doing comms. And
mm.
and at some point I think I've got nothing to communicate about because I've just spent all week doing comms on previous
I'm
comms, and
set
now
up for it, but I have nothing to
and
speak to.
what's actually going on in the business? I don't know because I'm too busy doing the comms. So, I'm a huge advocate for that, and I know this plays exactly to your instruments, but I do think that physical environment is so critical to underpin your leadership style. It
Mm,
has to, and but you can't just say, oh, let's have a perfect office with lovely colours and the right
no.
lighting, and have all of that and say, great, my job is, it's very easy to be an MD of a beautiful office. No, it isn't. It's the two have to go hand in hand together, and I think
Yeah.
that plays to my heartstrings because I feel it's all the aesthetics that come together to
Mm,
underpin your story as a leader, your principles as a leader. That's how our worlds collide, isn't it?
mm.
I think.
I agree. I actually had a conversation um with a shared friend, Chantel, this
Yeah,
past weekend. And and I was saying to her how the conversations kind of loop into the physical environment. And she has a more I guess sensitive role where
yeah,
there's
yeah,
very sensitive conversations that happen
yeah,
in a very large organization. And I said, well, where do you have those conversations? And she said, oh, it's really hard to book a meeting room. And I said, but how close are those meeting rooms to your space? And
yeah,
she said, not close at all. And I said, well, what is the route if it
yeah, yeah,
escalates to
yeah,
get them out of the building without being seen? And she
yeah,
said, none. And I said, well, what is the route for them to come if you've called somebody or you've called many partners to have a difficult
yeah,
conversation and there's people dialing in from wherever in the world? Where is that supported?
yeah,
It's not really. And so there was all of these kind of things where
yeah,
I said, can you see if I created and I started describing how, one solution would have been. And she thought, wow, that actually would help
yeah,
my role so much better and help the people. And I thought it's the pretty bits, as you said. Most designers and architects can make anything look pretty. Like,
yeah,
of
yeah,
course, we can. But that actually doesn't make a great workplace.
no,
That doesn't make a great
no,
laboratory or anything else. It's the structure. We have to make sure that the structure meets your needs, and every company is
yeah,
completely different. And you've got to deep dive into that and then put the pretty bit on the top.
yeah,
But that's not what you need to get right. You need to
no,
get
and
right the
yeah,
layout, the technology, the the larger meeting spaces, like so forth. And then anyway,
yeah,
we don't need
yeah,
to talk about design, but yeah, I agree with you for that
yeah.
point.
I mean, and back to the point that as an MD, this my typical day is I I think if every conversation I have in my day has led to something else moving on, nothing stagnating, something moving on, whatever it is, a
Yeah,
bid,
you're
a
moving the goalposts.
delivery, whatever it is, if every conversation I have is adding that extra, the value that adds is it's moved it forward or stopped it completely or whatever, then that's good. That's a good use of my time. That's how I plan my day or plan where I turn up, where I'm needed, because I don't need to be, and this comes back to probably the accountant training, and you know I kind of, I don't necessarily need to know everything to know what's going on. I can look
Mm.
at the numbers. When I joined this company, I looked at the P&L stats for the first 3 months, and I could pick out a handful of people that I said, I think these are your problem people. And I was
Just on the numbers.
100% right. Yeah, just on the numbers,
Wow.
just on the, um, you
See in
know,
for somebody that does not have that training or skill, what did you see in the numbers that
I mean, so things like, well, first of all, I mean, the obvious ones are sickness, absence, utilization, so productivity in delivery,
Yeah.
and as consultants, as professional services, we're selling advice, we're selling solutions, and we're selling expert knowledge into clients. So that is an individual's time. So if
Yeah.
that is not represented in terms of utilized percentages or income generated from
Like
those
billable
conversations,
hours, is that what you're
billable
saying?
hours, yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
and then you can see, there are often you get peaks and troughs in that, and you look at it and think, well, why is that peaking and troughing? What's this person's role? Where are they in the business? You can kind of predict, well, that's not how, if that's what it looks like, this person is not
That's
in
not what it
control of
should
their
be.
day. They're,
Right.
why is it peak and troughing? Oh, they're off sick every Monday. Why are they off sick every Monday? On it goes, on it goes. But the data is the for me, that's the
Baseline.
validation of the the environment, I suppose. It's not the starting point. It's wouldn't look at that and say we're going to do this and this because the data tells me to. The data just validates an indicator for me of what's really going on, and it just gives you something more solid to deal with. Um, but I think I think you've got to have your eyes wide open. You can be present, but there's no point being present if your team are not present, if people are still not coming into the office and not wanting to be joining part of when I was new, I was saying, like, come, where are your offices? I'll come and visit you, or come to London, or we'll come and do. And there were people linking in with me, saying, I can't get to London easily, but let's link in, and or trying to put Teams calls in with me. There was a huge percentage of the organisation really wanted to do that. And there were a handful of people that didn't. So I thought I'll send them a note and say, let's have a catch up. And those handful of people didn't respond to that either. So I thought, right, I've got all the evidence I need that tells me these people are avoiding me. They're avoiding conversation. They want to avoid the conflict. The inevitable is going to happen. And, the data validates all of that for me as well. So
Yeah,
that's,
kind of take the emotion out that you've got
yeah, yeah,
kind of concrete statistics that you can review, and then you've got the experience of
yeah.
these individuals on top of it, and the two validate, and then it becomes a non-emotional
It becomes a
discussion.
non-emotional, yeah. And
Yeah.
then there's always a story behind why things happen, isn't it? There's always, it's either someone else's fault or whatever it might be, but it's actually, it's I don't think, if you start from a point of, well, where's the, who's to blame. Many years ago I did it's health and safety training around a blame culture, and it just felt like in no planet in any galaxy anywhere does blame culture work. So why it
Yeah.
still even has a name, I don't know. It feels like that's just something that just really needs to disappear from the narrative in business. And so that's something around, dealing with conflict. Is this isn't about dealing with blame, this is dealing with the conflict. And I think
Mm.
often people think conflict is about blame, and just completely
Mm.
separate the two. So and I will often go into a debate with someone, or a conversation, just setting that tone, setting that, let's understand what this is. Performance management. It's, performance management meeting. We'll talk about walking to offices to have a performance management meeting in a minute, but
Mm.
that conversation is all about, listen, this is, recognize these traits, something's happening, things are different, we need a plan, let's help you get back to the person that you have been. Something's changed either in the workplace or outside the workplace. We need to have a performance management meeting about this, and get people in the room, and they come to that room believing they're going to be supported and helped, not believing they're going to be sacked.
Oh, that's
And it's a really good
interesting.
starting point. I mean, if they come to the room 3 weeks later and they're still,
It's a different
that is a
conversation.
different, it's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But then they know, right? They know that's coming. They know that's expected.
Because
My point,
you must set that out. Like you have 3 weeks, and these are the markers that we need to hit
yes,
within these like 3 weeks. So it's
yeah,
clear. The action plan is
yeah,
clear.
definitely.
Yeah.
Always with the starting point of, look, what's your end game? They have to understand. They have to be on the same page as to, we are here on the same page because of the same issues. That's
Mm.
the first part. And if they're not, that's the hardest part about conflict, I think, or managing performance. if that person does not accept that it is anything to do with them, getting them to that point, the start point of that conversation is the hurdle. But once you're there, the rest is conversation and being human
Mhm.
and being factual and being supportive and dealing with all the right actions. I think that very first bit about just, I guess we all know those people that, I think will say, well, look, it was a funny story. I'll tell this funny story. It's a joke.
Yeah.
I think it's a joke. I'm hoping it's a joke. It's an urban myth. And the story is that I was speaking to my mum. She was driving down the motorway and she said, I can't believe it. Do you know the chevrons on the road? The chevrons. Do you know the chevrons on
Oh,
if
yes,
you
I know what you're saying. Yes.
and the driving the rules are you leave two chevrons between you and the car in front. And my
Okay.
mum said to me, I can't believe it. She said, I'm driving 95 miles an hour and I still can't keep two chevrons between me and the car in front. And there's this story about, hang on, you think you're doing the right thing because you're keeping two chevrons between you and the car in front. The car in front is speeding. So now you are speeding because you
Now
don't,
you're
that's not the rule you follow. You need to follow the speed limit rule. And it is an urban myth, isn't it? It is a story, but it's a really good story because quite
yeah.
often that is what happens in business. People say, well, that's what they did and that's what, so I'm doing this because they did that. And you think, okay, I can see why you followed that rule or that principle or that approach. A lot of this stuff just needs unraveling. And I'll unravel once and
Yeah.
I'll maybe unravel twice. But if it's the third time, I think that's the
Yeah.
point we say you are refusing to learn and
Yeah.
you are maintaining a behaviour that is, and this is more around performance, isn't it? But I think, and that comes back to integrity as a leader, right? I'm known for, give me the chance to unravel, give me the chance to redo, give me a second chance if it's not that serious. But third time, you have to say, you are taking too much of management time to resolve issues that you are refusing to resolve. And there is only a limited amount of time we can apply to management leadership, isn't there? So,
Yeah.
it's being prompt with that. 90% of the time, I'm finding that people will vote themselves out on the third hit because it's, yeah, I know where this
Interesting.
is going. They're already looking for another job or they're already deciding, you know what, I need to, hands up, I've done it again. I've
Yeah.
done it again. And I don't mind that
I can't,
either.
in spite of myself, I can't help it. I'm
Come up
set in
with
my
that.
ways, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever their excuse is. Do you think people are capable of change?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I
Yeah.
do. I want to believe that's true.
Yeah.
And I think, I know I've changed. I know I've changed in this job. I changed in one meeting room to the next. That's because of what's going on. So,
Yeah.
um, whether that is, I think people can change. I
Mhm.
think one of the biggest struggles that we have are all the time the going is good. We can change. People can do things differently. It's when things are going wrong and you are derailed. Your trigger points have been pressed, and you know, and that's when we default back to the type. There's a baseline that we have, and I think that's
Yeah.
quite
And
often
that's the
when,
safety. It's almost the repeated behavior is just ingrained, but
yeah,
it is just a behavior. It's a
yeah,
behavior can be changed and modified.
yeah, and I still think you
Yeah.
can. Can you teach yourself to behave differently when you're in a triggered situation? Um, I think I think if you're resilient and you're agile, you can do that
Mhm.
easier than others. But I think it's a hard skill. But I do think I think everyone is capable of doing that. But what some people might need more support around them than others to make that happen. And I talk to people about when I see you've got your and Myers Briggs, Insights, all of those lovely programs that tell you all about yourself. And I used to say, you've got like, imagine three amigos over here. These are your three amigos. These are kind of like your defaults. This is who you are. This is what makes you the person that you are, that you pull these out and everyone knows you for this. These are your mates. But actually over here, you've got your three little buggers, your little devils that are sitting there chomping away at your shoulder, waiting for the amigos to fall off or waiting. And like, yeah, we're going to get her. We're going to get her. And no matter what happens, something's gone wrong at work. I've got a problem at the moment with some numbers, and I've got these guys over here that are saying just bloody do this, just whatever. And I'm thinking, no, no, stop you over here. Don't let this critter get into my head and take me down that road.
Mm,
Because I need the person at the end of the chain of this, or actually the top of the chain that's going to own it. I need them confident that they can fix this. I don't
mm,
need them stressing and worried that they're in trouble and something's gone wrong. And this little bugger here is saying, just do this. And I'm like, no,
mm,
that's never worked. Stop. But they don't go away, these
mm.
people. You just have to
Yeah.
learn. I know that this, you can feel it coming on. And I think you teach yourself little ways. We talked earlier about, you know, stopping yourself always being the first person to speak up and, wanting to contribute. And you find your own little ways of saying, yeah, I can see that. I'm starting to go down that road. I'm going to stop that. I'm going to pause that. And
Mm,
because I'm going to do something different. And I think everybody has got the ability to dial these up and dial these down. Everybody.
mm,
And you just sometimes need someone to help you recognize when these are appearing and what to help you work out your tools for how you deal with it.
mm.
And if the strengths are there all the time. When these are, this might even be something. I'm physically pointing to these little buggers on my
I
shoulder,
know
right?
they're there. I see them.
They're really clear. But sometimes I often say to one of my guys, he said, how are you today, Louise? And I said, I'm grumpy. I'm grumpy today. Oh, what are you grumpy about? What can I do? And I said, well, this has happened and I don't want to be grumpy. And they'll say, okay, why don't I do this, this, and this? And I went, okay, off you go. And because I think this strength is saying to me, please talk about it, share it, be open, be trusting, be transparent, talk to someone else that you know is actually probably better equipped to deal with this. So it's made me think, face it, deal with, I've sort of dialed it up. And I think
Mm.
we can all do that. I'm really interested in our archetypes as humans and how we bring that into the workplace and
Well, that's I
how,
was going to actually transition because that's where my head was going as well, of archetypes and ego. I think
yeah,
we both, I can imagine not having come to work with you that it can be male centered. I can imagine there's a lot of men at work, a team of 1,000, team of 60. I can imagine a lot of the people that were on your senior leadership team were men, the majority, I'm guessing. My industry can be quite male dominated.
yeah,
And female or male coming in the room with ego, I see it as fear. And
yeah, yeah,
I find that very frustrating because there's a rigidness and this inability to want to hear, listen, and evolve when
yeah.
the ego is in the room. So I'm curious to know what your experience is like with
Yeah.
that.
I mean, in the past, I've worked for engineering consultancies, and yeah, the that gender diversity was exactly as you've described it. But she, as a more junior person in those organisations, I think you are coming up against um, technical egos. You can't be right. These people have been there longer and are highly recognised and do things their way, and but that's less about gender, but that's more about how can you know more than me? And I also came into that environment not as an engineer, so that's for me actually the male female divide was less of an issue. It was more about the how can an accountant, and with and part qualified in most things that are fairly useful, but how can an accountant tell me as a I don't know, a concrete engineer, um how to run this project more efficiently? And I'd hit that a lot. I'd see that a lot, and think, well, the best heart surgeons aren't the best opticians, right? That's just
I love that
yeah.
example.
And
Yeah.
so I would often take the problem away from the person in the room, and exactly that statement, why would you go to your GP to have open heart surgery? You would you'd want the specialist, but how do you get to that specialist? You go to a GP, and the GP will tell you, I think we need to try this, this, and this. And in this example, I'm the GP and you're the specialist. And so, we can work together to, and the optician and the open heart surgery. I use analogies all the time to try to kind of work through this, take this away from me and you, take it away from the hierarchy or the male or the female or the whatever it is, and kind of anonymize it into another scenario. And what does that now look like? And it's such a leveler.
Louise, I've just loved our conversation to date. It's been, or to now, it's been so, so interesting. I'm taking so many points away with me. And, you know, you've said you walk out of every room or into every room as a changed person. I feel like I have changed during this
Yeah.
conversation, and I'm sure you've seen my my face light up, going,
Oh,
"Oh,
that's
I
cool.
that one landed for me." So I'm kind of curious to know, you're in this 30-year-old startup, as you've described
Yeah.
it, and you have all of these people working for you. I can imagine there's growth
Yeah.
in the plans for the future. So I am curious to know, as the strong leader that you are, and this kind of established process. Actually, there's two things I'm quite interested in, and
Okay.
I'm going to ask the two. One is, what is your favorite process that you've implemented, and kind of an attachment to that would be, are you employing AI to help you
Okay.
with
Yeah.
this? The second would be, what is the future, and how are you bringing your experience forth as you grow and scale the business?
Okay. Okay. So, what was the first one? Favorite process? Well, let's AI. I use Copilot all the time.
Okay.
I've even been creating agents to work for me. I use it with caution though. So Copilot, AI is creating knowledge that most of us don't have, but it's not really knowledge. It's just information. So I use it with caution, because I think that's useful information. What does that mean to me in terms of knowledge? And that's, I think, something that is very important to understand. We still need to apply knowledge to information. So AI has a place, but I use it for things like, I've got a little agent that will, on a Wednesday, I can run it any day, and I say, can you please look back over the last X number of days and create an action list of all my emails, Teams, meeting chats, any communication channel that we use, and provide me an action list by category. It's amazing. It's
Wow.
amazing. I get this list and I think, oh yeah, oh God, haven't done that, haven't done that. And then it's brilliant. So I've shared it with my teammates and I said, right, guys, this is saving me probably an hour a day. And if I've been away for a couple of days, my God, it probably saves me half a day, maybe. So brilliant. So I use AI to do task orientated stuff, which is great. Um, However, I've also used it to, we are in growth mode. Everything I do is about looking for new opportunity. Um, and I've used AI is amazing to kind of, actually, if I want to, I can look inside our own systems. Having only been here a year, I can run an AI to look across our own systems to tell me, have we tried this before? And what materials do we have already in the organization that are around this, and who is involved? And then that comes back to the process piece, right? Because if you want to bring in change or something new, if it's been done before, the first thing that most people are going to say is, oh, we tried that before. Or have a word with John, because John led that before and it didn't go anywhere. I use AI to find out for me, well, where have we done this before? Who led it? Are they still here? What were their pitfalls? Have those conversations, bring them back to the party and say, what's moved on in the last 2 or 3 years or whatever. Technology's moved on, leadership has moved on. We're a different business. We have different resourcing. How would we do this differently? What went wrong last time? And the best way to make improvement is to use the people that failed before to make the improvement, because they failed before. They know what they did before.
Yeah, they have the learnings. Yeah.
They have the learning. So I I use that to create new or to change processes or create new processes. And I think that's more about the people side of making change happen, but using a technology to get to that point quicker, to get
Yeah.
that engagement right quicker. Um, but one of the things I am so proud of what I've done. It feels like my entire career since I left school and studied to be an accountant has has come together in this moment in the last few months that for me feels like that explains my CV, the smorgasbord of my CV. That is now all explained by what I've been able to achieve in the last few months, and it is it's it's made such a difference to layers and layers in my team. And what I've done is, so we're a business been 30 years doing a certain thing. All the systems, the finance systems, HR systems, everything is constructed around running these projects, this business in this way. So to try to come in and land and grow a new business where we need data at different points in the month, we're running smaller transactional type projects that still require, doesn't matter if they're 10K or 100K, they still require the same level of engagement and interaction and financial analysis and operational rigor, all of that stuff. And what I learned was these systems are great, but because we've grown how we've grown, most of these people over here that manage these problems don't have access to these systems.
Oh,
But they do have access to the data that comes out of those systems probably 15 to 20 days after the event. So lots and lots of
there's a
lovely
lag.
lagging indicators. And what I've done is created different processes at the front end over here that require that feeds information over here into this system in a more robust way, organized over here through more detailed project controls. I have turned lagging indicators into leading indicators for these guys to be able to forecast their utilization, forecast their profitability on their projects, forecast their turnover really robustly for at least 4 months ahead. And
Wow.
so it is transformational because that then gives them, they are supposed to own and be responsible, racy, for the work that they do.
Yeah.
They have been almost doing that with their hands tied behind their back and one eye shut, and then trying to react to it halfway through the following month when it's just embedded even more of the challenge again. So to turn that around, for me, I've been able to do that because I know how they work and I know why they're doing what they're doing. I know why these problems have evolved, and it's not through behaviours and it's not through intention. It's through that's simply the way the system is constructed. So,
Mm.
you know, all
And
you
it's a
can
system.
do,
So systems can be broken down and
yeah,
reconstructed.
the
Yeah.
woman that drove with the two chevrons between her and the fast car in front, that's
Yeah.
a system. It wasn't a right system, but it was a system.
Yeah.
So understanding all of that and then actually just changing some tweaks on if we did this differently. So when the outset of actually defining a proposal to go out to a client, actually at the outset, if we define the program, the risk, the resourcing schedule, the dependencies, the assumptions, all of that stuff that is you would say, well, that's pretty critical to, you would do that in every single one of your projects. In this space that we've been working in, you might get engaged for, oh, I just want someone for 2 days a week for the next 3 months. So proposal goes in for that. Great. 2 years later, that person, or now 6 people, are still doing 2 days a week for this. And it's, well, what are they doing? What's the
Yeah.
outcome? How much have we spent? What's the profitability of this? When is this going to end? The client is now saying, well, I
What
didn't
was the
know that.
expectations to begin with?
Yeah,
What's the output? Have we achieved it?
some
Yeah.
of it has become a debt situation. But importantly, I'm saying to the team, you need to know you're growing your teams. We're scaling up. You scaling up question before. We're
Mm.
scaling up. You need to know your future workload, your resourcing schedule. You need to know where your peaks and troughs are. If you've
Mm.
got workload that is specified on a, we'll just call you off when we need you. 2 or 3, might be one day, might be no days, might be 2 days, might be 3 people, might be none. How can you forecast? Now,
Yeah.
if we're small business, if you've got 100 projects and 3 or 4 of them are like that, fine. If you've got 100 projects and more than 50 of them, more than 20 of
Yeah.
them probably are like that, you've
Yeah.
lost control.
Yeah.
So
How do you finance that? How do
yeah,
you, yeah.
so bringing that back to, right, every proposal goes out with these defined criteria in it. There's always an endpoint. If there's a call off, there's an endpoint. So just setting up different
And
rules.
is that also putting responsibility on the client to get really clear about the brief so that
Yes.
you can resource around it?
Yeah, which is often the problem in that the client doesn't really know quite
Yeah.
what they wanted. But right, we're professional services. The client
Yeah.
doesn't know. That's why the client is coming to
We tell
us.
them.
So we
Yeah.
need to be saying, we've done this before. We've done this
Yeah.
10 times over in similar infrastructure environments, and we know how long this will take. We know where the stage gates are. We know what the dependencies are. We know where there'll be pauses because of trust and other organisations getting involved, banks, lenders, etc. We know all of that.
Mm.
I don't. I know you do because you guys have been doing it for donkey's years. So,
Mm.
let's
Capture the
frame it.
data and
Yeah,
then create a system around it.
and create a system
Yeah.
around it. And then that means that's not us saying, well, it's not our fault. Finance have all this information and we don't have access to it and we don't get it till 20 days later. Finance are just reporting on what we've told them. We
Yeah.
have the source data. We created it. We built it. We're delivering it. We own it all.
They're almost just holding you accountable to
They're just
what
holding us
you
exactly.
projected.
So
Yeah.
this whole
Yeah.
change of actually, no, that's the tail wagging dog. That's not
Yeah.
how it works. This is how it works. And that's been rolling through. Yeah.
So,
I mean, we're
uh,
scaling up organisationally, the resourcing, but unless you have a system, you use the system, you understand the system, you can embed the system through the layers. As you scale, everyone's doing things the same consistent way, and you
yeah.
eventually are just overseeing the system. And as opposed to it is it. And I think, to be fair, if we're at that almost I would say you've probably heard people talk about this, that what's the optimum number of people you should line manage, and I
Mm.
think between 6 and 8 as an absolute maximum. People said line management, direct line management. I think, okay,
Mm.
that's probably fair. I would, when I look at that and think in terms of managing projects or managing clients, there is a point at which you if you're a team of a discipline of say 10 people, that's probably all very controllable. Everybody knows everyone. You can touch the sides of the business. You can
Mm.
probably have 10 conversations a week with everybody in your team about what they're doing and why they're doing it. And you can probably have conversations with 10 or 20 clients that they're all working for. There's a breaking point, and I think we are at that breaking point, which is a good place to be because it tells me we're breaking point.
Yeah.
We're
You're growing.
expanding, right? We're not going the
Yeah.
other way. And I think that breaking point is when those line management, say 6, a whole team, once it gets beyond 20, if you don't have governance, systems, processes, you're breaking it. You can have
It'll
all
fall.
the people, but without those, if you don't have those controls in place, you can't scale. You can't scale and sustain scale. You can't do that. And where these teams are is at that breaking point of moving into that plus 20. So one of them is actually quite. In fact, the two that are larger than that have been established for some time and have those. They work in a very unique space, which is
Yeah.
very consistent, highly governed through statutory requirements and regulations. So there
Mm.
is no choice. So very financially driven.
Mm.
That proves it, doesn't it? That
Yeah.
governance, that statutory
It's
guidelines,
almost written for
it's written for
structure,
you.
isn't
And
it?
that's, it's very, very black and white. So the,
Yeah.
the most junior person coming into the business has come in trained in those with those methods, with those tools. So
Mm.
it's a kind of, we're all on the same page straight away. But the other
Mhm.
parts of the business, especially technical businesses where you could be, the diversity of what they could be doing is, it is quite extreme. As a back to technical hierarchy, you can be the best heart surgeon, but if you don't have an administrator running your operating theatre with all the
Mhm.
tools in it, all of the right materials, the
Yeah.
resourcing that you need around that operating theatre with you, you
Yeah.
might
Paying
still
all the bills to make sure that the lights go on so you
keeping
can
the
actually
lights on,
sleep. Yeah.
clean
Yeah.
scrubs,
Yeah.
sanitizing gel. Somebody makes all of that happen, and you don't
Yeah.
have to be a surgeon to make that happen, but you
Yeah.
can't be a surgeon unless that happens. You can't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's
The
we've
crux of
yeah, that is the
it.
what a perfect ending to the what was the other one? What is the future? What is the future?
I think you can do both. I'm sure. I'm very curious to know what's next for Louise, but also, yeah, where are you taking the business and your leadership, and where are you going
Yeah,
with
so
yourself?
I mean there are there's a 5 year plan already in motion. Um, when I say 5 year plan, there's a 5 year financial plan. It's a number, just a number, and I'm like, okay, I've started 5 years forward. So let's imagine we're in 2031, and
Yeah.
this is the shape of our business. So I'm going to roll that back to who we are today. How do decisions we make today are going to take us on that ladder to that place over there? So what does that look like? So right now, for me, whilst the future is written in terms of numbers, up to our holding company, it is completely unwritten in terms of how we're going to get there. So, next steps for me are it's about, in year delivery, absolutely nailing the numbers. But critically now I'm about to embark on a future strategy piece for each of the 5 businesses for how we evolve to that endpoint. And I'm thinking at the moment that's 5 different sets of numbers that add up to a top. I've got a top line number and a bottom line margin. And I said, we might not be 5 businesses. What do we go through to get to this place over here? So I'm thinking about much more strategic organizational change that will set us up to drive this future program. And I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited
Wow.
because I don't know what the answer is yet. And I know what it isn't, but I don't know what it is. But I've got really good people in the team that I know will have views on this. And I think once I knit it all together, it we'll make the right plan. So I'm excited about that. Setting strategy and executing strategy are where I really
I
enjoy.
like to.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mm.
that's the future, which is both for the business and for me. That's gonna, so yeah.
We'll leave it
Um,
there. I think this has been amazing. Thank you so much for all of your time and for dialing in and having this chat with me today. I really
oh,
appreciate it.
thank you.
I
Yeah.
think all of us are walking away with many lessons and complete admiration and being inspired by what it is that you've
Oh,
accomplished and excited to see where you're going. So please come
thank you.
back
Thank
and
you.
let us
I've really
know.
enjoyed it as well. And it's kind of nice to, I was dreading talking about it to be fair, but it's actually really nice to sit back and spend some time just framing it and thinking about it. And just maybe we should all do that a bit more often to kind of say, am I doing the right thing? Am I, it's a bit of self-validation as well, but that check-in. So I think this has been really cathartic for me as well. So thank you for
Oh,
the opportunity.
thank you so much.